Well, greetings, Cap fans. Welcome to episode 279 of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Furbanas, and I've got a co-host. You know his name. It's Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob. A house divided against itself cannot stand.
That is true, Rick. That is a true statement. Is that an Abraham Lincoln statement?
It is. I think most people credit Abraham Lincoln for
Yeah,
that statement. Yes.
yeah.
During when?
Gettysburg Address.
No.
Oh, Emancipation Proclamation.
What was going on around the time?
Civil War.
Hey, yeah. Actually, where it is originally credited, although Plato, I think, has been known to reference it, but it's actually a
the,
quote from the Bible. So it was
the
in the
dog?
no, not Pluto.
Oh, Pluto.
Yes,
Sorry. Yeah.
but the original quote was actually Jesus in the New Testament. I think it was in Mark is that quote. And then there's
Okay.
also a couple of versions of it in like Matthew and Luke.
All right.
But yes, Bob, why am I greeting you with a house divided quote?
Well, because we are going to be treating ourselves to a Civil War recap tonight, Rick.
Yes, we are. And Bob, what is this recap that you speak of?
Well, a recap is how we tackle these longer story arcs, Rick, that we can't possibly handle in a single episode going panel by panel. And so what we do is we address them issue by issue, tackling the major scenes and turning points in those stories and trying to cover the entire story arc in a single episode of the podcast.
Very well. You nice job recapping that.
I think I had that written down.
Yeah, did you? Okay. It's been a little while since we've done a recap. I think the
Yeah.
last one we did maybe was about a year ago, and where we did the Patriot miniseries,
Mm-hmm.
and then prior to that, I think we did the Chosen
Yeah. Yeah.
miniseries,
Yeah.
and if I keep going back, we did a Deadpool, Wolverine, and Cap story, which was Deadpool 15 through 19 in Volume
Oh
5.
my goodness,
And we
that
had a
was a long
guest
time
on for
ago.
that one,
Yeah,
Bob. You remember who
yeah.
it was?
I don't. I can't. I don't keep track of those things. I'm way too important for that.
Oh, yeah. Gosh,
You know who I am?
yeah,
Come on.
I don't know.
You're both
It,
losers. You're both losers.
oh, it
Listen
was
to you.
Jon Waller Sewell. That's who it was. And look, he's back again.
He's back again, better than ever, folks.
Y'all are both masochists, obviously.
Welcome back to the show, John. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great, man. I hope you guys both are too.
We're doing well. I will say, though, I have a question for you guys, both of you guys, both of you Southerners. All right, because I know when people listen to this, it's going to be like mid-February, right?
Yeah.
When this comes out. But we were recording this towards the end of January, and it was just like a snowmageddon that just happened right this past weekend. Bob, I see you're still wearing a sweatshirt.
I am. We're in second winter now, Rick, down here
Whoa.
in Southwest Florida. So
Is
we
that
had
anything
our
like second breakfast?
It's a little bit like second breakfast. We get to enjoy it a second time in the season. So we had our first winter a couple weeks ago, and then it warmed up again into the mid 80s. And then here we are again with temperatures in the 40s, expected to drop down to the 30s tonight, maybe even
Ooh.
as low as the high 20s over the weekend. So, and then that's it. By mid next week, we're over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Luxury.
And,
Luxury. You're over there
and
sitting in 20 degree. I'm down here in Georgia and we have 15 degrees. We are not prepared for this kind of stuff, man. You know this, Rick. You used to live here.
uh-huh.
And we do not handle this stuff well. You live up in the north now where you were originally from, and you guys have all the salt and the trucks and everything like
And the
that.
technology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here in Georgia, a snow cone truck jackknifes and school shut down.
That's true. That's true. I lived in Atlanta from 2000. Oh no, sorry, 19. I'm getting it all mixed up. Um, it was I think I moved to Atlanta in 1994 and left there in 2009. Or maybe it was 2000. It was 1993, 2009. It was 16 years.
That's a good
And
spell.
and when I was there, I was baffled where just the hint that it could possibly snow, they closed the schools. And I was like, what in the world? And they're like, well, we don't have sand. We don't have trucks. We can't, so we're not going to send them to school if it could possibly snow. I mean, that's just
Right. Yeah.
outrageous.
How would they get home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it? What was the weather like there this weekend, John?
Well, we ended up with about a quarter to a half of inch of ice all over the place. Like I mean like my place.
Mm-hmm.
But in my home county, it was varying from anything like that to absolutely nothing. The storm seemed to kind of go up and around us for the
Mm.
most part.
Yeah.
Still, some places got blasted pretty hard. Again, relatively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I know for us here at my house, though, we were stuck for a couple of days. It happens.
Yeah.
But the bigger thing was when word of this just even first started happening. Jody came home and mentioned it to me on Tuesday night of last week, and I was like, "Wait, what?" There, we have to go to the grocery store immediately. And
Of course.
she's like, you're being over dramatic. I went to the grocery store the next day on Wednesday. The storm wasn't coming until Saturday. I went
Yeah.
on Wednesday and I sent her a picture of the bread aisle completely bare. I said, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm overreacting.
Yeah.
There was a comedian, I can't remember his name, who did this, but they talked about that. Yeah, everybody goes, they got to get bread, they got to get milk, they got to get, eggs, right?
Eggs.
And it's
Mhm.
like, what is it with people in storms that they have to
Yeah.
make French toast?
Yeah. French toast is good. It's a hearty meal, Rick.
It really is.
It
I
is a
haven't
hearty
had some
meal.
in a long time.
I did
Well,
I did a case study every time I teach my class, and I did it this week. I do a case study on toilet paper. So
mm,
because the toilet paper hoarding that goes on
yeah.
during
Hmm.
in front of big storms or during COVID. Oh my
Oh
goodness,
my
it was
God. Yeah.
toilet. So I
COVID.
do a whole like 10-minute shtick that I have about toilet paper. So make sure you get your toilet paper.
Uh, do
Always
you,
well
do
stocked.
you, do you have like a little, fun with it, a little color commentary, get a little
Oh,
Beavis and
absolutely.
Butthead,
Oh, I
you know?
do. I always start off with like, raise your hand. Who likes to poop? That usually sets it up nice.
Uh,
Students don't know where I'm going with that. So
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I'm sure there was a lot of students who thought that was funny,
yeah.
and
Some didn't.
probably a few who didn't give a crap.
Yeah, yeah.
All
And
right. All right. We got a lot to cover today,
We
guys.
do.
It is a
Yeah.
7-issue story of Civil War. And so we want to get to it because otherwise we are going to be here all night. And I, I really, when people say, what is your uh, Mount Rushmore of Marvel crossovers?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Civil War is definitely in my Mount Rushmore. Uh,
So much.
I mean, I we could have for that's a topic for another day of what everybody's
Yeah.
Mount Rushmores are. That'd be a lot of fun to
Yeah.
talk
That
about
would
and
be great.
debate. But I was always we'll talk about it today on why I was just always so impressed and mm, not moved is the right word, but impacted by this story, and so I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. Um, but I also can't help but think, and John had said this before we got started, but it's 20 years ago. That's crazy.
Yeah. I know. I was like 12 when I read this the first time.
I gotta tell you, when I think about that, because I used
Wait. I got to get an abacus or a calculator. The math is not jiving here.
Because yeah.
when I think about it, it was, I had a comic book store in aforementioned Atlanta area. And I remember when and John was uh, my best and favorite customer in the store.
Frequent
That's
flyer.
right.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is absolutely right.
Um, and so I remember when Civil War hit, and somebody had from another retailer had said, "You should stock up on this." And I'm so glad I took the advice because it was the number one selling comic I had the entire time I had my store. And I think, well, I don't know how long I had the store, 7 years, something like that, before I sold it. But um, it was by far Civil War #1, my highest selling comic, and it went through second printings, third printings, you name it, and just trying to keep that on the shelf for as long as the story lasted. And it was 7 issues, but it took nearly 10 months for it for the entire story to come out, but due to some delays with the art. But John, what do you remember from that time period when Civil War was on the shelf and the buzz and the talk and the interest?
Oh man. So one of the first things that comes to mind about that time period was just how amazing the stories and the competition was between Marvel and DC both at that time. I mean, if I'm recalling this correctly, Civil War was coming out, I think, shortly after Infinite Crisis was from DC. And
Mm,
so you had that going on. And then after Civil War, you have Secret Invasion, but over on DC, you have Blackest Night coming and
Mm.
in the span of a few years, but still it just that whole time frame was fantastic. And being able to come to your shop and talk with Seth Talley, who some of the group will probably know, and just all being able to bounce all these ideas off. But Civil War, um, it was it was a bombshell. I
hmm
mean, it just absolutely was. When it hit the right time in our country's history of the politics that were going on. Um, Everything just was just bombastic. I know I'm coming back to that same word, but
hmm
man, it just hit so huge. And one of the things that really stands out to me that I know that they're not apples to apples, but when the movie came out years later, that I felt like they missed out on kind of an opportunity that the comics capitalized so well on was all the promos, man, were all every single one. See, like, whose side are you on?
hmm
Mhm.
Yeah,
They
Team Cap or
really
Team Iron Man?
exactly, you know, they really rightly so, honed in on we're not going to tell you which side of this to pull for. We're presenting two sides with heroic faces, and which side are you going to choose?
hmm
Mhm.
And I loved that dynamic.
Bob, did you read this when it was coming out
I
month
did
by
not,
month?
Rick. I didn't because in 2006 I was in year. I just finished up the first year of my assignment at the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi. I still had 2 more years to go, and so I wasn't getting comic books while I was in Vietnam, and I didn't get a chance to read this until I returned back to the United States late in 2008 when I started visiting the comic book store, and then I picked these up as back issues and read them.
So you had the opportunity to read this all back to back as opposed to these
Right.
huge cliffhangers. Every single issue was a cliffhanger, and waiting 4 6 weeks for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
It was painful because you're just on
Yeah.
the edge of your seat.
Yeah, but I didn't know what, obviously I needed to get the main 7 issues, but gosh, there's so many one shots and,
Oh yeah.
tie-ins with other titles. I mean, it was a ginormous undertaking to try to figure out which ones to pick up and collect
hmm
and which ones to try to read by other means.
Yeah. And what was going on in the Spider-Man titles was huge during this time, and you'll see why when we get through this. So enough about that. Why don't we just dive into this? And we broke this up, right? So each one of us is going to kind of go back and forth and take different issues. I'm going first with issue number 1, and so I'm going to read the solicitation for this.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
A conflict has been brewing in the Marvel Universe, threatening to pit friend against friend, brother against brother, and all it will take is a single misstep to cost thousands their lives and ignite the fuse. As the war claims its first victims, no one is safe as teams, friendships, and families begin to fall apart. Civil War, a Marvel Comics event, stars Spider-Man, the New Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and the entirety of the Marvel Pantheon. Civil War, the crossover that rewrites the rules, begins here. So the writer for this is Mark Millar. And just to kind of give a little backstory on Mark, so he had really, I mean, he had a couple of 2000 AD issues that he wrote in, I think, right around 90-ish. But it really wasn't until 1994 did he begin his professional comic writing career. And he had a really nice run on Swamp Thing for DC. And he wrote that for a few years and then went on to write other stories and runs for DC, including some really nice runs on Flash and Superman. And then he also had, at this point, start getting known. And he was writing The Authority, which was a really phenomenal story if anyone hasn't checked that out. And then he broke into Marvel. And he started Marvel in 2000, towards the end of 2000, basically. And he launched Ultimate X-Men #1. And he wrote Ultimate X-Men for a few years. And then at the same time, he started to launch the Ultimates, which was the ultimate version of the Avengers. And he was writing those, and he was doing Ultimate X-Men. Then he did the Ultimate War miniseries. He still did a little work elsewhere. He was doing Superman Red Sun, which was a great kind of Elseworlds type story. Then he had launched his own creator-owned stuff with Image called Wanted, which they ended up making into a movie. He was doing Marvel Knights Spider-Man. So he was hot at this time. There was a lot going on, and he was getting a lot of buzz with all the stories that he was writing. Wolverine, Ultimate Fantastic Four, and then Civil War comes. And again, he is, I guess, probably, one of the top 5 hottest writers at the time. And then the pencils are by Steve McNiven. Now, Steve had a different path. Steve started in late 2000, and he was with CrossGen. And he was CrossGen for maybe 2-3 years, doing Meridian and other stories. And then he finally broke into Marvel in 2004. And he was doing Marvel Knights 4, which was a kind of like a more mature version of the Fantastic Four. Then he did the New Avengers story arc that had the Sentry. And at this point, he's starting to get noticed. and that's when he came on board with Civil War #1. The inker was Dexter Vines, who had been around for a while. He had done Superman, Batman, and a few other series. Colorist Maury Hollowell, letterer Chris Alopoulos, and editor Tom Brevoort, who was also editing the Captain America books at that time, which, by the way, just to kind of paint the picture of what was going on in the Captain America world this time, we were at the beginning of the Ed Brubaker run in Volume 5. So we are kind of going through that. The last 2 years have been introducing the Winter Soldier, introducing some other things going on. So that's the world we live in right now with the Captain America. All right, guys, did I miss anything?
That was a pretty good recap right there of the creative team. Well done.
I agree.
So I'm going to give my recap of issue 1, and I'll be honest with you, I pretty much stole this from MarvelFandom.com, but I added some of my own thoughts into it. So the issue starts with the New Warriors, which have been around for a little while, young superhero team, and they are at this point involved with a reality show type series, and they are with a camera crew, and they're outside this house of where they found these 4 villains, and the 4 villains are not too many people that you know about, but they've been around. So we had Cobalt Man, Speed Freak, Cold Heart, and Nitro. And one of the New Warriors, Microbe, tells Speedball that they're out of their league and they really shouldn't take on these villains. And Speedball, he's kind of young and brash, and he disagrees, saying that, well, they need a big ratings boost since Nova left the team. And so at this point, the villains spot the New Warriors and becomes a huge brawl. And during the fight, Namorita, who is Namor's cousin, chases after Nitro, who runs near a school park. And Namorita smashes Nitro into a school bus and tells him to surrender. However, Nitro then tells Namorita that the New Warriors are playing with the big boys now, and suddenly explodes. And he takes out the park of children as well as the entire area. So then we cut to a shot. This is a double-page spread of the
Hey,
Avengers.
can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
I'm terribly sorry, but I want to verify if my memory is correct here. Rick, do you recall at this time that they put out part of this scene as kind of like a preview in maybe other comics, or just like a free giveaway or something? Seems like I recall them wanting to go ahead and prime the audience for this whole thing with Nitro and his explosion. Do you recall that?
Now that you bring it up, I vaguely recall it. I don't remember a giveaway.
I think maybe it was like an insert in other books, or
maybe in the Marvel previews,
maybe so.
Yeah. So here's this double-page spread, and we see the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and they're all there aiding the rescue teams, right? The firemen and so forth, that they're searching for survivors. And Captain America, he's pretty angry, and basically it's these innocent children, and he says they died for some stupid reality TV show. Iron Man questions why the New Warriors didn't call the Avengers, since they must have known they were out of the league. And then a mom tells her son, don't worry about the Sentinels, because they're all standing there around, since the good guys were sent to watch the X-Men. So there is showing here there's still a little tension going on with mutants at this time, which Wolverine takes exception to. Now, Goliath, which was basically, the size of Giant Man, one of the other Marvel characters, been around since the 70s. He says, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, that it won't be just the mutants that the government are watching after this. Then we cut to the Larry King show, and She-Hulk in her She-Hulk attire, but she is wearing like a business suit because she is an attorney, and she says that yes, it is reasonable that superheroes to be treated like the police. They should be trained. They should carry badges. Then we cut to the funeral service for the children, and then the pastor up at the pulpit asks for mercy upon the superheroes who carelessness caused this tragedy. And then Tony Stark, while leaving the church, there's a mother of one of the dead children by the name of Damien, and she spits in Tony's face. And the mother blames Tony for financing the Avengers and encouraging their reckless behavior and operating outside of the law. And the mother says that the blood of her son is on Tony's hands. Then we cut to an evening in a New York, outside of a New York club, and the Human Torch arrives to meet his date, and the doorman lets Johnny and the date cut the line. But before Johnny can enter, the rest of the people in line are upset. Like, why does he get to go in? And Johnny, very callously and immaturely, shoots back, well, hey, once they save the world from Galactus, then they can borrow his free pass. And Carol responds with, well, how about, what about the next time you blow up a school or the next time you kill some kids? And he's like, well, that wasn't me. And then somebody hits Johnny from behind with a beer bottle and knocking him out. And the crowd proceeds to stomp away on Johnny. In the Baxter building, there's a superhero meeting with Doctor Strange, She-Hulk, the Fantastic Four, X-Men, Avengers, Young Avengers, and other assorted superheroes. And they all debate about whether to go along with a national registration bill or should they oppose it. Now, Doctor Strange, he's against it. Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Yellow Jacket, and She-Hulk are for it. Wolverine and Falcon are opposed to it. And we all see the split, and Wolverine and Thing kind of, trade some verbal jabs over it. But then Daredevil in the back tells everyone this is the end of the way they do business. So then we cut to inside the SHIELD helicarrier, and Commander Hill asks Captain America if his superhero friends who are meeting in the Baxter building will go along with the Super Registration Act. And he says he has no clue. But he does say this will split the superheroes down the middle and there will be a war between the two sides, mentioning that most of the rebels will be the street-level heroes like Daredevil and Luke Cage. And Hill asks him that the rebels won't be anyone he can't handle, and that the Avengers should support the Superhero Registration Act, and he must be on the front leading them. Now, Cap says he will not arrest heroes risking their lives every day for their country. Washington should not start telling them who the supervillains are. And she responds saying supervillains are guys in masks who refuse to obey the law. And then suddenly, armored shield soldiers cock their weapons, surround Cap. He tells the soldiers lower the weapons. It's pretty tense. And Hill says, you set their tranquilizers and get ready. And Cap's like, this is insane. Hill then orders the soldiers to attack Cap, and a battle ensues for a few pages. And then Cap ends up escaping, get this, by jumping out of a window of the helicarrier. At the same time, this fighter plane is about to dock inside the helicarrier, and Cap lands on the cockpit, smashes it with his shield to give him a good grip, and tells the pilot to keep flying. And he also tells the pilot to watch his language because the pilot curses. And then Captain America makes his grand escape. On the Baxter building, the Watcher is lurking in the background of the meeting. And Doctor Strange says his presence is an ominous sign. Finally, there's a protest rally outside the White House demanding for legislation to control superheroes. Inside the White House, the president says that it's a real concern that Cap is now the figurehead of the rebels. And the president says that they need a figurehead. We then see Iron Man with Mr. Fantastic and Yellow Jacket. And Iron Man tells the president to push ahead with this registration as planned, and that they will deal with Captain America. The end of issue 1.
Wow.
I know, right?
Yeah.
That is one heavy story and you could feel that it just changes everything in the Marvel universe, right?
Mhm.
There's clearly a large tragedy that takes place that is, bigger than almost anything we've seen before. Pitting the public against heroes and forcing the government to take drastic measures. And this setup is drastic enough, but the division among the heroes creates a tension and builds the drama. And then what I think a move most probably didn't see coming was that Steve Rogers sides with the rebels and he breaks against Shield in quite a phenomenal fashion. I mean, that scene of him landing on the jet and commandeering
Mhm.
was incredibly cool. And it was made even better with Steve McNiven's stunning artwork. But Bob,
Mm.
John, were you surprised by what happened in this first issue?
I recall when I was reading it at the time, that when when I was reading it, that Maria Hill tells the guys to set their tranquilizer darts ready or whatever. I'm just reading that page and going, oh man, you just made a colossal mistake.
Who,
Um,
them or Cap?
Maria and the team. I mean, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, you just pulled a pin on a grenade. Um, and I've wondered, even now rereading it, it's like I wonder if they kind of put him in that position. You talk about he joined the rebels. At that point, there weren't really rebels to join yet. What it
Mm-hmm.
was is he kind of just rebelled on his own because they're telling him, get in line with this or we're going to take you down. And Cap's like, I don't do real well with bullies.
Mm-hmm.
And so he jumps out a window. And I agree with your assessment. It was very, very inspirational, heroic as he lands on that plane and all that. But I I don't know that I was really surprised. Maybe because of that framing. Um, we'll get to surprises, I guess, later in the series.
Okay. Bob, what about you? Were you surprised
Well,
at anything?
I will tell you that, I was surprised at how quickly Captain America got upset. Because normally he's a very calm, measured individual, right? Not easily flustered. But in that meeting with Hill, he got angry very, very quickly. And so it became very apparent that this was not going in a direction that Hill anticipated. And maybe the readers wouldn't have anticipated. Might have thought, and now, of course, they got to move the story along, but I would have thought there'd been a little bit more. I mean, Cap's the sort of guy, like, yes, I know he stands on principles, but he wrestles with things too. And this is a pretty momentous thing. Now, the other thing is that Stanford, the just the death, like
Mm-hmm.
decades, decades go by in comics and we don't really see large scale death.
Right.
So that was rather jarring in and of itself as an opening for this series. And I think a lot of readers probably were shocked by that at the time. So those are just two things that sort of caught me off guard, and particularly just Cap getting very angry. And you could see just in the way that McNiven has illustrated his facial expressions. He was angry right up front. So yeah, we'll see where this goes, my friend.
Now might
All
be a
right.
good time to interject something that I found out after rereading in preparation for this podcast. And I did not know this. Don't know if you guys were aware of it, either one. According to a report that I then followed up on to try to track down the actual written interview, writer for Civil War, Mark Millar, originally came up with this Civil War idea as taking place in the Ultimate Universe, which
Well,
would
that makes sense.
explain a little bit more of
Yeah.
Cap's demeanor throughout this series.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's a good point. Yeah, that does solve a mystery.
I don't know. We have seen Cap Steve get upset multiple times. And I don't think it's as out of character as maybe you think. In my mind, like he just saw lifeless child bodies, right? And he he saw, you know, he okay, let's go back to what you said, Bob, right? Like we don't see that. We have, when was the last time we saw something that big happen in Marvel Universe? When was the last time Cap saw something like that, right? And so I think, he's outraged by the fact that it was carelessness and for a stupid reality show that this happened. So I we've seen him angry before, and I think it's a justifiable reason for him to be angry.
I agree that it's justifiable, but I do think that this, as well as things that are coming, there felt to be a little bit of a pronounced shift away. I agree with something Bob was saying, that Cap in the main 616 is usually a little bit more measured. I hear what you're saying. In this kind of circumstance, that could cause you to not be so measured. He's running a little bit hot. And then, like I was even saying, he got painted into a corner. But reading some of his words, and it could be hindsight or whatever now, having read the way Cap has been portrayed in the 616 since. But still, I was reading, I was like, this feels a little bit hard, even for these circumstances. And then when I found that interview, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Even if you just go with the sense of Mark had been writing Ultimate Cap and Ultimates for so long, that alone may have colored a little bit of the presentation, because Cap's, some of the things he says in this, it sounds like Ultimate Captain America.
Yeah. And some of the things he does, and which we'll get to, I'm sure.
All right, well, let's get to it then. Bob, you've got number 2. Now, number 2 has the same creative team.
Indeed.
So let's hear your recap for this issue.
All right. So this story, it starts off with a bang, Rick, because we got a full page splash. And I should say the title printed at the top of that first page is Captain America Goes Underground. So that kind of gives you a hint in the direction that this story is going. So we start off with this beautiful, gorgeous full page splash of the Vulture and the Grim Reaper. And they are chained to a concrete pillar, and they are looking pretty bad. They have been beaten, bloodied, and bruised. And they look sad and pathetic. But 6 miles above the city, we see, I'm sorry, before we even get to that, we see S.H.I.E.L.D. agents arrive on scene, and they're reporting back to Maria Hill that they have found the Trapster as well. And he is in a similar condition, but he's chained to a sink in the men's bathroom. So something serious has gone down here. So they radio back to Commander Maria Hill, who's in a helicarrier 6 miles up, and she's monitoring the situation. And she reports, she turns around and talks to the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent behind her and says, hey, this has been within 72 hours. We've got 15 supervillains that have been captured and left in a similar predicament, all tied up basically for S.H.I.E.L.D. to come collect them up. And she recognizes that, one, this is the work of Cap, but he's not doing it all by himself, because, Cap's good, but he ain't that good, right? It's not physically possible for him to be wrapping up all these supervillains in this expeditious manner. So that means he's not acting alone anymore, and he's starting to bring superheroes over to his side. So we turn the page, and elsewhere in New York City, we see the aftermath of a big battle, and we see a Doombot, a big old Doombot, just crashed out on the ground. And around him, we see Iron Man and Yellow Jacket, Mr. Fantastic and She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel, Tigra, and Doc Samson. And they're all, apparently wrapped up in this battle and have taken care of the Doombot. And we see people start to gather around, and they're cheering the superheroes. And Iron Man says, you hear that? That's the sound of people starting to believe in superheroes again. But She-Hulk, she doesn't seem particularly convinced. And she wonders out loud that maybe, they're not really superheroes anymore. They feel more like SHIELD agents on the federal dole, rather, than what they had been previously. Iron Man's, he's a little dismissive, though, and he responds that superheroes who save people's lives and tackle crime, and that's who they are. And the only thing he says that has changed from what it was before is that the kids, the amateurs, and the sociopaths are getting weeded out. So that's a pretty strong statement. You can get the kids and the amateurs, but the sociopaths, that seems a pretty strong indictment. Tigra picks up on that, and she challenges Iron Man, asking him where Captain America falls in those categories. And Iron Man predictably dodges, and he says that Captain America is simply wrong this time. So
you left out something. You left out something, Bob.
Did I?
There's some really gratuitous Steve McNiven art here about She-Hulk.
I didn't notice that.
You didn't notice?
No, of course not.
All right. Anybody who's listening, go to the YouTube video. I'll be sure to post it for you.
Rick, I'm a married man. No, I noticed, Rick.
All right. So the Baxter Building.
Yeah. So we're back at the Baxter, but now we're at the Baxter Building. And the thing is, he's like sitting around with Valeria and Franklin, and Sue checks on Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards himself. And Reed is super excited. And he's talking about Tony's big plan to revolutionize the superhuman community. But Sue is a little bit unhappy about this, especially about Tony's plan to jail a lot of her old friends. Reed, acknowledges that it's unfortunate, but, he thinks there's no other option. And he shows her his projections of the exponential growth in the superhero, or I should say the super being population, and the inevitable negative consequences that will go with it on society if their activities aren't brought under control. He's basically vibrating with excitement about Tony's secret plan and the ideas that Tony and Hank Pym have been coming up with. And it's then that Sue notes this CD on the table. And I had to laugh, right? Because if anybody read this today, kids would be like, what's that thing? What's that small circular disc item, because they don't know what CDs are, but it's marked 42. And she asks Reed, what's that CD with the number 42 on it? And he says, it's classified information. So he's not even sharing that with Sue. So across town at the Daily Bugle, we see J. Jonah Jameson, and he's talking, with Robbie Robertson about the new Superhero Registration Act. And he's thrilled. And I quote him, he says, no more masks and no more excuses about creepy secret identities. And really, that's what this whole thing is coming down to. Meanwhile, back across town at Tony Stark's penthouse, Tony is waiting with Happy Hogan as the clock ticks down to midnight, because that is when the Superhero Registration Act is going to become law. And he's almost second guessing himself in this scene. It's about 20 minutes to midnight, and he's hoping aloud that he's doing the right thing. And as they're sitting there, the Jumbotron announces in Times Square that the act is now law. A day later, as we turn to the next page and discover, the SHIELD agents are pursuing Eli Bradley, aka the Patriot, the son of Sarah Bradley and the grandson of Isaiah Bradley. He's also a member of the Young Avengers, and they have caught him trying to stop a robbery, and now the SHIELD helicopters have him trapped on a rooftop. They try to take him out with some tranquilizer energy darts, and that doesn't work. They fire gas tranquilizer canisters into the building in which he's taken shelter. He survives, but the whole building's floor basically gets blown up. We then see the rest of the Young Avengers, Wiccan, Hulking, Stature, that's Cassie Lang, and Hawkeye, the Kate Bishop version, manacled and being marched into a SHIELD armored personnel carrier. Turn the page again, and we see elsewhere at another location, Daredevil and Luke Cage are watching on television monitors as the Young Avengers are being marched into that APC. But Cage says, don't worry, Captain America and Falcon are already undercover at the scene. We then see two SHIELD agents sitting in the cab, the driving cab of this APC, presumably transporting the Young Avengers away from the scene. The agent riding shotgun is complaining about how all these kids are freaks, that they get the buzz off being, they get no buzz off being legit, and that they only get off on the masks and that sort of mystery man aura that they get to have by parading around town in their costumes. He then asks the driver, if he's heard about number 42, the thing we saw in that CD, presumably that Sue had seen on Reed Richards' desktop. And the driver turns to him and says, "You know something, fella? You talk too much." Surprise, surprise! The driver is actually Captain America disguised with a pair of glasses, a la Clark Kent.
What?
And Cap turns and he punches that guy so hard that he flies out the passenger door, knocking the door off the cab of the vehicle. And this guy goes flying out onto the highway, and all the other police cars that are escorting him have to swerve out of the way, crash into each other, trying to avoid hitting this guy. Meanwhile, Falcon's in the back. He's entered the back of this personnel carrier, and he instructs Wiccan to use one of his transportation spells to help them all make their escape. And just in the nick of time, as the vehicles close in around this APC, the entire APC is transported away in a flash of electrical energy. And when they emerge, the APC is inside this very, very large underground bunker. And they exit the vehicle and they're greeted by several others. There's Cable there, and Daredevil, Cloak, Dagger, Luke Cage, Goliath, Hercules, and Linda Carter, Night Nurse. No, yeah, that's right. Not the Linda Carter from Wonder Woman, Rick. I know your mind automatically went there.
It sure did.
Yeah, I know that in your mind.
His was not the only one.
I saw the wheels turning. The smoke starting to come out. So Captain America explains to them that they're in the Shield safe house number 23. And there are apparently 28 of these safe houses littered all around the globe, known only to level 33 Shield officers. And there's only one level 33 Shield officers, and that's Nick Fury. So Cap explains that Nick Fury has told them that they could use this place for as long as they wanted. And also that Nick Fury is working on secret identities for all of them. So because the world knows who many of these folks are, they got to have new secret identities. Finally, in the last scene of this issue, we have Dagger yell at Captain America to come watch Tony Stark's press conference on TV. We also see that over in the X-Mansion, we see the X-Men are also about to watch it. And Sue Richards is by Johnny Storm's bedside at the hospital, and she's watching it as well. So we see the press conference, and Tony Stark is there, and he introduces Miriam Sharp, whose son Damian died in that explosion triggered by Nitro. And Spider-Man is there as well. And Iron Man introduces both of them, and Spider-Man steps up to the lectern to speak. And he talks about how it's time for superheroes to go legitimate and earn back the public trust. And he kind of juxtaposes that approach to what Captain America advocates, although he doesn't use Captain America's name specifically. But basically that involves, he alleges, letting people with powers continue completely unchecked. He then says, "I'm not wearing my old mask because I'm ashamed of what I do. I'm proud of who I am, and I'm here right now to prove it." And then he peels off his Spider-Man mask and says, "My name is Peter Parker, and I've been Spider-Man since I was 15 years old." Any questions? And that is the end of this issue.
Whoa.
Yeah, right? Now, I know.
Big stuff.
It's a big deal, right? It's not the first time that Peter Parker's identity has been revealed. I mean, I think it's been like 4 previous times that Spider-Man's identity
Not like this, though. Not like
Well, there were 2 times. It was sort of, but one time Doc Ock, unmasked him. Another time, a couple times where it was accidental, where he was being monitored and he didn't know, or had his photo taken.
Yeah. But
know,
no, but
right?
But not like this, where he comes out in front of the press.
In front of the press. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it is pretty mind-boggling way to end this first issue, Rick. So what are your first impressions, Rick?
Well, it was already, whoa. I mean, like.
That was, okay.
I mean, at the same time, I was kind of reading along Amazing Spider-Man at this time. So there was that whole pressure and debate on whether he should do that. And he talked it over with Aunt May, he talked it over with Mary Jane. And so he got their blessings. And so you still weren't sure if he was going to do it. And then here he is doing it. So you didn't have to read Amazing Spider-Man at this time, but it certainly fleshed out the story. So it didn't seem like maybe this was just a, off the cuff kind of decision. But it certainly all of a sudden was like, wow, like this is big stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and it has, I mean, it has repercussions, right? Even far beyond the Civil War story arc. Jon, what about you, man? You got any thoughts on this one?
Well, I'll tell you, first thing that comes to mind, you say it has repercussions that go on. I would say it has repercussions that continue on all to this very day.
Good point.
This ended up changing the Spider-Man world for good.
Yeah.
Maybe not for good, but for forever.
Right.
I will also point out that the next to last page, it cracked me up the first time I read it. It cracked me up rereading it. Jonah Jameson passes out.
Yeah.
Just absolutely faints dead away. And they're like checking it, Mr. Jameson. Oh man, the man that has said Spider-Man such a menace, and the little snot-nosed kid that used to bug him about being paid for pictures has been in the whole time. That's one of the best payoffs to me.
Been a long time coming, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. I can't wait to get to number 3 to see how this plays out. Number 3 has the same creative team, but Dexter Vines gets some help with inking from Mark Morales and also Steve McNiven himself. Jon, let's hear your recap of issue 3.
All right. So we start off issue 3. We're picking right up out the chute with the press conference, and Tony's telling Peter, "Soak it up, man. You're bigger than Elvis now," which you're talking about. Bob said, kids reading it nowadays will be, "What's CD?" I think there'll be a lot of people going, "Who's Elvis?" But then you turn the page and we're in Wakanda. Mr. Fantastic, Black Panther having a conversation about whether or not Black Panther would be a part of things with what eventually goes on to become the Initiative, but is Iron Man's side, basically. And Black Panther is more interested in where Reed is with Sue. And he basically leaves it at, word of advice, call Susan. So you got a newspaper clip. You got Cap's Secret Avengers smash the new Sinister Six plot. But then you cut to Doctor Strange in Greenwich Village. He's looking at this paper and all this stuff. So it's not Doctor Strange there. It's Doctor Strange's village. Yellow Jacket is wanting to speak with Doctor Strange. And Wong's basically saying he wouldn't even consider supporting Tony Stark's plan. He's gone into seclusion. But then we have Iron Man, Tony Stark, meeting with Emma with the X-Men, which I will add, being a big fan of the Krakoan era, which came much later, and Tony and Emma's relationship there, I'd forgotten that they had any kind of connection, and they even talk about having had previous connections.
And when you say connections,
well, I think they call it a little arrangement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Emma lets Tony know that she shares everything with Scott, though, so he already is in the loop. So anyway, you got kids playing. There's a Sentinel watching over here, which, by the way, we were addressing that in issue 1 with the Sentinel that was present. I believe at this time, this is still dealing with the fallout from House of M. No more mutants. There's only 198 left. And the Sentinels are basically keeping tabs on all of the 198 as much as they can.
Yeah, I also believe at this time, Mark Millar was writing Wolverine, and he was something was going on with his brain, and he was just kind of like on this rampage. And so Wolverine also, I think, was kind of not very well thought of at this time.
That is true. With Tony and Emma, Tony's trying to recruit the X-Men to their side, and Emma's basically saying, "You know what? We got our own problems we're trying to deal with. We're not going to be a part of this one way or another." Tony's pushing back and is talking about the moms and dads of Stanford, and that pushes Emma's button. And I just absolutely love the art as they're sitting there having this mimosas or whatever, you can see this smoke showing up, the skull in the lower left-hand corner of a panel, and it then gives way. She's mentally giving Tony the imagery of Genosha and saying, where were the Avengers when Genosha died, Iron Man? Where were you when our babies were burning? It's very, very powerful. Tony basically gets up and leaves, but before he does, before he's completely out the door, Bishop happens to be there and says, hey, can we talk?
I really like his
You
Tony
then-
Manero suit too from Scarface.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Got that-
Tony Stark's.
got that,
Yeah.
got that look going.
So we have a cut to a diner. You are seeing, you would not necessarily recognize them from the visuals. You're seeing Captain America and his secret Avengers in their new civilian disguises. And thankfully, the captions give you who it is you're looking at. It's Captain America, Hercules, Daredevil, and Goliath. And they're
I'm sorry.
talking up.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry to interrupt. I have to say, I've thought this before when his name was mentioned. I will think it now, and I will think it throughout the rest of this episode.
Say it.
Every time I hear Hercules, Hercules, so it's in my head. Now it's in yours.
Put it out of the way.
Now,
Okay, good.
now it's, yeah, okay. Thank you so much for that. So they're talking about their civilian identities and basically just discussing the situation. And Cap happens to mention that he's thinking about an appointment he had 10 minutes ago with a kid from the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I told him we'd play baseball in his backyard for a while, but the place is probably crawling with cape killers. It was a nice little touch of humanity there, especially considering what we were talking about and is to come with Cap maybe having a little bit of an edge. This was very much a touchstone to me for Cap sitting here thinking about, I was supposed to be helping some kid.
Right.
It really resonated.
Yeah.
But they get a call, they got to go, and they run off. You cut to Presbyterian Hospital, and Johnny Storm's awake. He's wanting to know where his sister is. You go to the emergency call, the Geffen Meyer chemicals. I laughed a little bit at that because I believe that's a reference in and of itself. But you've got Cable there. He happens to see, as he's looking around, Geffen Meyer is a division of Stark Industries, and they're like, it's a trap. They get
We all thought that.
yes, you had to. Iron Man shows up. Of course, it's a trap. How else were we going to get you all in one place? And things start escalating. I do note this was a little bit of a hint of things to come. Iron Man has the Thunderbolts with him, who are reformed villains. That's going to be some foreshadowing in the near future.
Yeah,
You have
radioactive
Cap.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. You have Cap and Iron Man having a standoff, trying to talk this out. Iron Man's like, Cap, please, I know you're angry. You've known me half my adult life. You know I wouldn't do this unless I believed in it with all my heart. And Cap gives him 5 minutes. He gives him that time, shakes his hand, and Spider-Man's excited until Iron Man looks down and goes, "What the hell?" And when Cap shook his hand, he put a little neutralizer on his hand, and it's not going to be 5 minutes. It's go time. Goliath grows up really big. Hank grows really big, and they're wrestling with each other, and people are just fighting left and right. And there's helicopters coming in, and Spider-Man's in the mix. You got him trying to take Cap's shield away from him. Iron Man gets himself rebooted. And during this fight that comes next, Iron Man brutalizes Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to just hit home with that. You talk about back in issue 1, Bob was asking, we're talking about surprises, and Rick was asking if we were surprised. What surprised me when I was reading this the first time, and it hit me hard again, the top of one of these pages, this like half page splash practically, Iron Man just decking Captain America across his face, mask torn, blood splattering. I mean, it is brutal.
Yeah. It tore the A right off it,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then just
can I add one the page before,
please,
which I thought was really interesting, was he
Yes.
said that, he's been monitoring Cap's moves, and his armor has absorbed all that, so he knows what Cap's going to be doing before he does it. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, Iron Man basically going full Prometheus.
Yeah, it had a little Batman feel to it. Like I've been trying to figure out, like if in case I ever need to take you down.
Yep, that's another good one. Exactly. All right, so Hercules, sorry, shouldn't have said that name. Herc gets away and tells Cap he's coming, and Maria Hill says, codename Lightning has first pass at this, and there's a lightning strike that comes down and just absolutely blows Herc up into the air. People are just absolutely gobsmacked. And then you have at the bottom of the next to last page, Daredevil on the ground looking up and says, "My God." And you turn the page and God has come.
The God of Thunder.
Thor, my God carries a hammer. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the wrong event. That comes later. Thank you for the layup. Thor is there, and full page splash, gorgeous art, lightning just cracking everywhere, and talk about cliffhanger moments. Just to give people a little bit of context, Thor had been gone, arguably dead, but
Presumed,
gone
yep.
for years in the comics. So this was a big, holy beep moment for Marvel Comics.
Well done. Well, nice recap, John.
So you guys, what'd you think? What'd you think when you got to the end and Thor showing up?
I thought to myself, how did Mark Millar get permission to have so many like critical moments, right? Like Thor. I mean, obviously, and we'll learn more about Thor in the next issue or so. But Thor shows up. Peter Parker reveals his identity, right? I mean, these are major events, right? I mean, editorial was like on board 100% with this crossover event. So pretty impressive stuff. And we see the brutality, like this is not like a disagreement. Like we can disagree about, what kind of ice cream we want on our cake, and not get angry. But this is the brutality of this fight going on. Is there's a lot of animosity threaded through here, and it's a bit shocking, right? Because these are people who have worked with each other, served with each other, fought beside each other, saved each other's lives, and now they're just brutalizing each other. It's shocking.
Yeah, I agree. It is shocking. I'm going to have to disagree with you, though, Bob, because we will get into an argument if you put coffee flavored ice cream on my cake.
The chocolate cake?
We will throw down. We will throw down, my friend. All right. Got to get past this cliffhanger to issue 4. Issue 4, same creative team. And this issue continues the brawl from the end of number 3. So we just pick up right where we left off. The anti-registration side is stunned to see Thor alive and well. Thor, who acts with a ruthless manner, proceeds to attack the anti-registration side. Iron Man continues to lay a serious beat down on Cap. Goliath then looks to take on Thor, and Thor responds by blasting a giant bolt of lightning through Goliath's chest, killing him instantly. Uh, Thor goes on to blast the rest of the rebels, but his lightning is blocked by Invisible Woman's shield, which is a surprise, which is a twist, right? Because she had been with Reed and Thing on the registration side. So the fact she did this was a little bit of a surprise. And then the rebels see this opportunity to run. Reed Richards then gives a verbal command that shuts down Thor. So what's that about? And Invisible Woman tells Reed to not talk to her, and she walks off. So the story then shifts to the Avengers Tower, where Henry Pym is absolutely sickened by Goliath's death. And
sorry, can I interrupt real quick before we depart from that? I just think it's worth noting that before you get away from it, the Watcher shows up again. The Uatu shows up just to basically look down so sadly at what all's happened, particularly at Goliath's corpse.
Yeah, good point. So we go to the Avengers Tower, and Pym reveals that Thor is just a clone, and that Tony had been holding on to a strand of Thor's hair since the first meeting of the Avengers.
Talk about Batman stuff again.
Yeah. Pym wonders what kind of man combs his furniture for hair and skin cells. Evidently, this Thor clone is not functioning properly, and Spider-Man wonders if they have joined the right side on the issue. At the Secret Avengers headquarters, where Cap team is getting medical treatment from the battle, Cap is angry. And Nighthawk says to Cap, we need to stop before the entire team is dead. And Nighthawk and Cassie from the Young Avengers decide they don't want any part of this anymore, and they leave. And then we cut to Goliath's funeral, which is sad because not only is it a funeral, but it's sad that he's still in his giant form in this hole in the ground. Bill Foster. And Tony Stark is pretty upset. Now, Mrs. Sharp, you remember the mother whose son was killed at Stamford? So she approaches Tony and tells Tony that, you know what, Goliath knew what he was doing. That it's no more Tony's fault than a cop could be blamed for shooting a criminal who pulls a gun on him. And Mrs. Sharp gives Tony her son's favorite toy, an Iron Man action figure. She said it was to remind Tony of why he was doing what he's doing. And Reed Richards watches Peter Parker at the funeral saying, he's acting pretty suspiciously. So the story shifts to a letter written by Sue to her husband, Reed. And she's leaving him and the kids. And that she and Johnny are joining Captain America's anti-registration side. And Susan hopes that Reed will not think she's a bad mother or a bad wife, that he will spend more time with the children, and she hopes that Reed can fix all this. Now, back at the Avengers Tower, Reed and Tony are talking about how they're losing more heroes from their team, and the balance has tipped in Cap's favor since Goliath's death. And Reed and Tony decide to unleash the new version of the Thunderbolts to tip the tide back. And these are some of the worst of the worst. We're talking Venom, Bullseye, Lady Deathstrike, Jack-o'-lantern, Songbird, and even the Jester and Taskmaster. So that is this cliffhanger.
Oh my God, again with the final splash.
I just want to say, just starting with the opening scene, where we're seeing the heroes clash with each other. This is not something we really often see at this scale. So just right then and there, if you put yourself in the mind of 2007 and you're seeing this, this is quite impressive and quite making an impression. Because we don't see heroes killing each other. So that makes Goliath's death, so shocking. And then the dramatic turn keeps coming as we see Sue turning on her husband. And then everything about this story up to now feels like a huge impact, something that, we're not going to be able to walk away from unscathed. And then seeing all those villains at the end, just it makes me want to hurry up and read the next issue, which, by the way, didn't come out for another 2 months because of the art delay. So, Bob, you were very, very fortunate. Quick thoughts on this one.
Do either one of you have any suspicions about this Miriam Sharp woman as you were reading this?
I do. That seemed awful convenient to have a figure of Iron Man as her child's favorite action figure. It seemed very manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to give a shout out to my buddy Doug Hogan. A lot of you guys know who he is as well.
Hey, Doug.
When this series was coming out, Doug and I were talking about it, probably at Rick's shop. But Doug, I'm pretty sure it was his idea. He was like, I'm telling you, man, this woman's kid's name is Damien. This is Mephisto. He is screwing with these people, and it's all going to be this big setup. But the thing that I remember also coming out was he was like, and that's how it's going to get fixed. That's how this is going to get fixed. And I guess we'll see by the end whether or not things actually get fixed.
Bear out that way. Yeah.
Right. I will also point out when you get to the part about Sue's letter, the part that really, I guess maybe because Reed is being so callous, so removed, even by his standards, it just wasn't resonating. The fact that she was leaving the kids in his charge, that's one thing. But man, that last panel on that page where Ben is standing there and he's watching her go, how sad he looks, and he's got his hand up against the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh man, that just broke my heart.
Yeah.
You know what I found really hard about that scene was how much I'm not going to say she manipulated him, but she goes through this whole thing where she says, I didn't want your last memory of me to be tainted with all the blazing fights we've had in recent weeks. Hence the oily fish dinner, parentheses, good brain food, the bottle of your favorite claret, an excellent antioxidant, and making love one final time, good for the immune system. That just seems so cold and calculated.
With the wine?
Everything about it. I felt like who?
I don't know.
I don't know. Listen, if I'm spending time with my significant other and having a nice dinner and a bottle of wine, and then we make love, and all that, and I find out afterwards that she knew in the back of her mind the entire time this was going to potentially be the last time, and I'm doing it for these reasons, that to me is a break of trust. And I don't know, it just seems so cold and calculating to me.
I didn't see it as cold. I hear what you're saying, though. I do. And in putting yourself in that position. But I think if you do that, you have to try to put yourself in Reed's position. And Reed, especially Reed Richards, as he's being presented in this story, she's doing things for him and so that he can have his mind and not be preoccupied with the fight or whatever. I don't know that Reed's going to look at it the way that you would, because Reed's not in touch with his emotions hardly at all. He's just being pure intellect and getting excited over the fascinating things he and Tony are coming up with. So I didn't feel like it was quite so cold, but yes, it was pretty calculated. The thing that really, I guess, stood out to me when you were rereading it.
Did I mispronounce the wine wrong?
No. I just didn't notice it really until then, is when you read it out loud. Making love one final time. I don't think Sue was anticipating she was going to be coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
that's what I felt was so cold. I mean, like, if two people are making love and one person in the back of their mind is like, this is the last time, and you don't know it, I don't know.
Maybe I'm not expressing my sentiment here correctly. She had just seen Goliath get his chest burst open. I'm not saying that she's like saying one final time, I'm not coming back, we're breaking up. I'm saying Sue's going away thinking, I'm probably going to die.
Oh,
that's how I read it as well, John. Yeah.
Interesting. I did not think of it that way. That is a very interesting point.
This isn't. I want you. I was going to say this isn't her mindset is not that like I'm doing this because I want you to then apologize and change your ways. It's I'm doing this because I'm going to go do this thing I believe in, and it's probably going to end up being the death of me.
Well, I don't want you to think I thought that was the reason she was doing it. Was like, I want you to feel guilty and change your ways. No, I didn't think that at all. Anyway, let me ask you guys a tough question. At this point, when you are reading and you just finished issue 4, were you Team Cap? Were you Team Iron Man? And had that changed at all since the first issue? Or you have been that way the entire time at this point in the story?
You're talking about when I was reading this when it was first coming out?
Mm-hmm.
I was Team Cap the entire time.
How about you, Bob?
I'm not so sure. I'm not even so sure I am entirely Team Cap right now.
I know, right?
Yeah, I'm struggling with
that. That wasn't the question, though.
Yeah,
because we'll get to that when we're discussing at the end how things might have changed over the years. But at the first time you were reading it,
I might have been leaning more toward Team Iron Man at the time. I was a very different person back then, and although I was well on my way to evolving away from who I was in my 20s and 30s, there was still that tug. Where I would have had a very difficult time. As much as I love Cap, respect and admire the character, I had a hard time understanding why he was so adamant.
I'm with you, Bob.
Fracturing the community.
I'm with you because I'm a very pragmatic, rules following type of guy. I have been my entire life, but that's not to say I don't question authority, because I do.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not to say I don't point fingers when I feel that the authority is wrong. But I didn't necessarily feel the authorities were wrong here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's being a masked vigilante. I totally can see why the public, was upset. I could see why the government reacted the way they did. I could see why some of the heroes were like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, let's get training. Let's be legit. Let's be on a payroll,
Right. Yeah.
Now,
can I get some dental insurance?
Yeah. I mean, but on the other hand, and maybe this is a Libra in me where I'm very even scaled and I see both sides and I play devil's advocate more than I like. I can also see like, but wait a minute, now you're going to start telling me who the bad guys are. Now
Yeah.
you're going to start telling me who and where I can fight. Now you're going to potentially put my loved ones at risk because, my identity could get out there. So I see that side of the story too. So I think I was very torn when reading this at this time. I don't know. I mean, as Captain America fan, being my number one hero, I wanted to be Team Cap.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I felt like it was like there's win-win situations. I felt like this was a lose-lose situation.
Yeah. That's a nice way to put it.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
That's
And I don't
fair.
think we can't divorce it from, like, if you're talking about reading this, in that rough time frame, even though I read it a little bit late, you can't divorce it.
Remember,
from,
this was 5 years after 9/11.
Yeah, and 5 years after the Patriot Act, which is what we're analogizing here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a very different situation, and we can argue about the particulars of that. And so the author is trying to take social reality and mirror it in a way that makes sense in the comic world, and it doesn't fit perfectly. And so it does leave a lot of that gray area, I think, for us to wrestle with.
Going back to that final page, first of all, just the art is amazing. Those villains standing there, I can't help but go back to Iron Man standing over that Doombot, talking about how, yeah, well, we're not going to be having sociopaths.
Right. Yeah.
And yet here we are, front and center, bullseye.
Best intentions.
That man is an absolute sociopath.
Yes.
And then I will also point out, because context, not only of what's going on in our world, but context of what's going on in the Marvel universe at that time. You say that's Venom. Yeah, it's Venom. That's Matt Gargan. That's not Eddie Brock.
Good point.
That is Venom when he is one of his most villainous forms. So we are talking about Taskmaster, who is utter mercenary, Jester, Jack-o'-lantern, Lady Deathstrike, Bullseye, Matt Gargan is Venom. The only person that's got remotely anything close to a conscience in this is Songbird in the background.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Good point.
All right, let's get to issue 5. Bob, what's your recap?
All right. Well, as you recall from the end of the last issue, we've got Sue leaving Reed and her family to join Cap's side. And this issue opens up in New York City with Sue and Johnny Storm outfitted in their uniforms being pursued by the superhuman restraint units. Those are the Cape Killers. And they're chasing them through the city. And finally, Sue turns on her invisibility, and Johnny manages to get them away from the Cape Killers. So it's just a couple pages, but it ends with a really interesting scene inside of one of the Shield, inside the Shield helicarrier, when one of the agents is talking to another, and he says, "It has to be said, flooding the streets with Shield agents has made an enormous impact on criminal activity. Our boys keep this up, and we might not even need those new Thunderbolts." So there's a broader goal here. It's not just apparently rounding up the super beings, right? They're impacting basically what's going on in the city. They're driving crime level down by just flooding the streets with Shield agents. So take that as you will. So in the next scene of this issue, we've got Nighthawk and Stature, who, as you recall, in the last issue, had left Cap's team. And now they're over at Stark Tower for a pro-registration event. And they seemed resigned to the inevitability of Stark's plan. Nighthawk tells Happy Hogan it was Goliath's death that changed his mind. And Stature, she explains that things are just different now, not like they were in the 1940s, with a little subtle dig at Captain America there. Happy says, "Look, Tony wants to welcome you personally. I don't know why he's running late." But in the next page, we see why he's running late, because he's facing off with Spider-Man now. And Iron Man's telling Spider-Man that he's acting like a lunatic, and he asks him to sit down, let's have a conversation and talk this out. But Spidey's fired up about Stark's plans for this negative zone prison that he's designed. And, Tony's saying, look, like, we got to have the negative zone prison, because we can't just send these superheroes, supervillains. We can't send them to regular prisons and jails. They can't hold them. We got to have something special for these metahumans. And he goes on to tell Peter that, many in the government and S.H.I.E.L.D., they wanted to completely outlaw all superheroes. So this Registration Act is simply, a natural compromise. It's a reasonable compromise. And but this is where Tony makes a mistake, because he mentions Aunt May and Mary Jane, and that's when Spider-Man punches Iron Man and sends him through the wall. Peter then tries to turn and get away from this scene, and he goes to the windows, but he can't break through the windows. And Tony tells him that those are reinforced windows. But just then, Cape Killers come onto the scene, and they're trying to attack Spider-Man, but they accidentally blow out the windows, allowing Spider-Man to escape, leaving Tony there by himself. So Maria Hill then radios Tony Stark to inform him, over his protest, might I add, that she's sending these new Thunderbolts after Spider-Man. And she says, I know we couldn't trust this guy. So specifically, she dispatches Jester and Jack-o'-lantern, who pursue Spidey down into the underground sewer system of the city. And these villains are like pumped, right? Because they don't like working for S.H.I.E.L.D., and they make that clear. But they do love the chance to beat up on Spider-Man and do it legitimately. So they lay a serious beat down on Spider-Man. But before they can kill him, which is what they want to do, they hear from up above saying, hey, we're coming to pick him up, so back off. But they're not able to accomplish that, because out of nowhere, boom, Jack-o'-lantern's head explodes, and they've got somebody else there rescuing Spider-Man. And who is it? None other than the Punisher himself.
Frank Castle.
Turn the page. Yeah, Frank Castle. Across town, we see the Invisible Woman and a Human Torch, Sue and Johnny, and their new disguises given to them by Nick Fury, their new secret identities. And it's a little bit of a testament to Fury's odd sense of humor that these new identities have them posing as husband and wife. So we see them entering Captain America's new headquarters, where the anti-registration forces are really deeply embroiled in a meeting. The heroes are actually discussing how Cloak and Dagger got caught by the pro-registration side. And Cap is angry that for every person that seems to be coming over to their side, every couple of people that comes over to their side, they seem to lose one to the Cape Killers. Suddenly, this is beautiful. It's like a gorgeous splash page.
Oh,
they all
Bob,
turn.
Can I also, you talk about Cap. Well, I think we should point out Cap's looks rough, right? Like,
yes,
he's
he does.
his arms in a sling, his face is all, bruised up and battered. His costume looks a little, tattered. He's still suffering from that beat down from Tony Stark.
Yeah, he's got bandages on his face, and we know Cap heals quick, right? So this is not long after, but he looks haggard. And they all turn because who walks in the door but Frank Castle in his Punisher garb, and he's cradling Spider-Man in his arms. And he says, this guy needs help. And so they usher off Spider-Man to the infirmary, where he's treated by Jane Foster and Linda Carter. Wonder Woman. No, Night Nurse, right? Meanwhile, the Falcon's interrogating the Punisher, hey, which side are you on? And the Punisher responds that since now the pro-registration side is enlisting the aid of known thieves and killers, he's now on the anti-registration side. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, I'm sure. This generates some controversy among this anti-registration group, as several members of the team, like Monica Rambeau and Stingray and Johnny Storm, they're not exactly thrilled that Punisher is around. And they turn to Cap and they're like, are we going to let this guy stay? And Captain America gets a little abrupt, and he's like, shh, everybody, pipe down. I got to mull this over. Meanwhile, in the shadows, we see Tigra.
Okay, all right. His actual words were, quiet, Cage. I'm thinking.
All right, fair enough.
right.
Fair enough, right? So, and then we see Tigra in the shadows, and she's on her cell phone with Tony Stark. And I'm wondering to myself, who lets cell phones in a secret underground bunker facility? Like, do they not have, OPSEC? But I digress. So,
And I
in the
love it's a
next,
flip phone.
it's a flip phone. There you go. Yeah. In the next scene, we see a squad of Cape Killers place Daredevil into custody. Reed Richards and She-Hulk are on the scene, and Reed mentions how the public is so behind the pro-registration side, and so is the U.S. government. Everything's great. Crime is at an all-time low, and the only people that are causing problems these days are the other superheroes from the anti-registration side. Still, he complains that he wishes he had never gotten involved. He's sick of all the criminal lunatics that they're using for the Thunderbolts. And they've got, by the way, they've got Hank Pym doped up on antidepressants as well. So, everything's not rosy on the pro-registration side of the register. And She-Hulk responds that public opinion would have forced S.H.I.E.L.D. to bring down every single superhero in America because they were sick of 16-year-old kids blowing up buildings. And her view is that it was Tony Stark, and only Tony Stark, who opened up a window to give everyone a future in the superhero community. So she's still very, very much pro-Tony. In the next chapter of this issue, we go over to Rikers Island Penitentiary. Any of you guys ever been to Rikers Island?
I have not.
I have not.
Okay, that was just a quick check. I wanted to make sure I'm dealing with legit folks here, not a bunch of criminals. But anyway, so we see Tony Stark, and he's escorting Daredevil.
Maybe I was just never caught.
Or if I had been, I would definitely lie about it.
There you go. That's the right answer. Tony Stark is escorting Daredevil through this portal into the negative zone prison. And Tony tells Daredevil he hates hunting down his friends. He feels bad about it, but there was no other option because the U.S. government was adamant that they were going to institute a complete ban of superheroes. This Registration Act was the only possible option. And Tony tells Daredevil, he's like, hey, look, man, the next plan is to establish these 50 different teams, one for each state. Superhero teams are going to be officially registered and licensed, like NFL, like memorabilia or stuff like that, licensed, and they're going to get paid for by the taxpayers. It's going to be wonderful. A federal course, federal teams from coast to coast. And Tony says, Daredevil, you'd be great to lead one of these teams. But Daredevil doesn't say anything back. And one of the guards says, yeah, he hasn't said much because we caught him and he had this piece of silver, the silver coin under his tongue, which he hands over to Tony. And Daredevil turns to Tony and he says, hey, guess that's 31 pieces of silver you got now. Huh? Sleep well, Judas. Presumably an allusion to Judas Iscariot, the disciple that betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver and turned Jesus over to the temple guards. And so that is how we end this issue. Pretty amazing stuff. Punisher, the guy who kills supervillains, is now aligning himself with the folks that are breaking the law, Rick?
I know. And I got to tell you, that scene where he takes out Jack-o'-lantern, and then afterwards, we've all seen when we've carved pumpkins, like if a pumpkin bursts, right? Yeah. Like there's the pumpkin guts just laying there. That was his head. His head was just a broken pumpkin with nothing, just like, pumpkin seeds and everything spilled. I found that to be very interesting and a little amusing.
Darkly comical.
And a little disgusting.
Yeah.
This one didn't have quite the cliffhanger, the way it ended, unlike the other 4 issues. But it's still a compelling story nonetheless. So we could feel that it's all leading up to something, which leads us to issue 6, which has the same creative team. And for you, John, to come back with your recap.
All right. Before I jump into 6, I want to just quickly address, again, we're talking about context of the time in the comics. I wonder, Rick, you said you had tuned into Marvel Fandom to help with some of your synopses. Did you happen to notice that Marvel Fandom credits this as not being Matt Murdock?
I did not.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Danny Rand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
According to Marvel fandom, this is when Brubaker had just started his Devil in Cell Block D story. And so
Oh,
Daredevil
right.
is in prison, not the
Matt
42
Murdock's in
prison.
prison. Yeah.
Well, as Daredevil, but yes. And so it's Danny Rand running around as Daredevil, but that doesn't make sense to me because of the way this ends. The whole biblical reference, that's very much Roman Catholic Matt Murdock. And I'm just going to look to my buddy Rick to give me confirmation on that.
It is very much Roman Catholic, 100%. But, I don't know. I think Danny Rand is a very spiritual fellow, and I think he's studied many different religions,
Sure.
and I think he's familiar.
And he's playing a part.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So issue 6, we're starting off at the Shield base in Arizona, and we got a new Hercules, as well as some other Greek god inspired heroes for the Arizona team being discussed by Maria Hill. And believe this is supposed to be Hank Pym, is it?
Yes, it is.
Except current circumstances being what it is. Are we going to even mention the elephant in the room that some of these people aren't who they actually are supposed to be? Because we have,
if you feel the timing is right.
Well, I just wonder if it's worth noting that they just talked about Hank Pym's doped up on a bunch of antidepressants. But this is not Hank Pym.
Sure, it certainly looks like him.
It certainly does. Almost like a shapeshifter had taken his place. And Spider-Woman, not Spider-Woman. Just things that I couldn't help but retroactively, as I'm rereading this, think to myself, and it changes some of my perceptions about the story as we're going along.
But let's be fair though. Right here, did you, when reading this for the first time, did you have any doubt that was Hank Pym?
No, not doubt that it was Hank Pym, but I found myself admittedly questioning how on board Hank was on the pro registration side. I don't think I really questioned Spider-Woman's so much, but then being informed about what happens later and who they actually are, it makes sense to me that you would have at least one each on each side. They got to monitor the situation
where are
from
you
every
seeing
side.
Spider-Woman? I'm not seeing her.
Spider-Woman's been not on this page, sorry, but just in general, she's on the Cap side.
Jessica Drew?
Yes.
Okay.
I've seen her. Yes.
So not a huge player in this, but she's definitely seen in the background and in battles coming along. But yeah, the Hank thing, it did kind of bother me at first time reading through, but I'm a little bit of a Hank Pym fan. So it bothered me, and especially, like I said, I was Team Cap all the way. But that's enough of that.
Yeah. And under normal circumstances, John, Rick would have me describe in loving detail Commander Maria Hill's outfit, but we lack the time tonight. But I just want to acknowledge that.
Understood.
Well, you could just use 2 words if you'd like.
Tight black.
There you go. All right. So we're going to make a cut to the Baxter building. They are working on Thor's not clone anymore, or kind of clone cyborg is more what they're going with now, which I guess makes more sense. And you see Iron Man standing there with an American flag just flapping in the background behind him, very patriotic looking, talking about how being told boring's good. And yeah. Go ahead.
You know what? I apologize.
No.
I want to come back to this original scene later when we find out what's going on, because I want you to take a note at the top of this page. There's a guy who comes up to Hank Pym and he
Yep.
says, problem with Poseidon, Dr. Pym. I think one of the guys, fed him the wrong stuff and he's turned a funny color. Could you come take a look?
Yes.
And then he looks at Hill and he smiles. I
Yes.
think
that's somebody in particular.
yes. And
I
he
smell what
pulls
you're cooking.
Hank Pym and
Uh-huh.
pulls him away, which, by the
Yep.
way, in the previous panel, what's he doing? He's popping a pill.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's quite all right. We see in the Baxter building that the Punisher has gone all diehard and is crawling through the vents and such, making his way through. And Cap is running the monitor section, kind of helping guide him through. And then you cut to Atlantis. And Sue is having a meeting with Namor the Submariner. Totally makes sense why Sue would be the one that was sent, but Namor, shock and surprise, takes a little bit of umbrage because he takes umbrage at everything. And starts insisting on being referred to as Your Majesty. Sue's trying to basically say, don't play games. Cap's one of your oldest friends. And Namor's just offended. And when he calls Sue on some of this and talks about taking advantage of their unique relationship, Sue says, what are you talking about? We don't have a relationship. He says, I can feel your heartbeat through the water, Mrs. Richards, and it tells me a very different story from the lies upon your lips. Relying on, for those that maybe don't know it, at least insinuation of attraction long-standing between Sue and Namor throughout the years.
Well, who couldn't be attracted, John, with those boxer shorts and dressing gown? He looks like the Will Ferrell character from Wedding Crashers, just sprawled out on his chair
With abs.
With
Mom!
abs. Yes.
Mom, make some meatloaf,
You have such a great point there, Bob. Oh, okay. So we're on to the Secret Avengers headquarters, and would you look at that? There's Spider-Woman.
Mm-hmm.
So they're being told, Namor says no, Wolverine's not going to break ranks with the X-Men, Doctor Strange still out of reach, and Black Panther was very upset about the whole Bill Foster thing. So
can I say something here? I just
Yeah.
want to say this what stuck out to me in this particular scene. I love Steve McNiven's art.
Yes.
I think he is top of his game in this
Yes.
whole series. But when I look at this top panel and I see Luke Cage, Captain America, Spider-Man, Frank Castle, and Sam Wilson all walking together,
Mhm.
and they're all the same height.
Right?
I don't
Well-
understand that.
Well, to be fair, in terms of perspective, I mean, Luke and Frank are in the back. So, they're a little further away. You put them all side by side, they might be taller. But Spider-Man should be smaller, you're right. He's a little wiry guy.
Sorry, that just stuck out at me.
That's all right.
All right.
All right, so checking on Spider-Man, he's feeling better. He's glad to be on this side. And you go to them talking about the plan, dealing with 42, the negative zone prison. As they're discussing this and talking about whether or not Spider-Man is in good enough shape to go forward with some of this stuff, Diamondback, which some of our Facebook group fans will be appreciative of. Cheers across the pond. So talking about that, since their numbers might be a little bit better than they anticipated, she calls forward Goldbug and Plunderer. And Cap is taken by surprise by this. What the hell is going on here, Diamondback? Goldbug and Plunderer start pleading their case, how they want to join up, the blah, blah, and they're summarily gunned down by the Punisher. And I can't help but laugh a little bit again, the dark humor after he's there with the smoking guns. He's just killed these two people right there. He looks over his shoulder and looks, what? You turn the page and Cap lays him out with a punch, calls him a murderous piece of trash. And Punisher says they were bad guys, Cap, thieves and killers. Cap tells him to shut up, kicks him in the face, delivers a shield shot right to the side of his head, demands that he fight, calls him a coward. And Frank, laying there bloody, says, not against you. And that gives Cap a little bit of pause. Tells him to get him out of there, throws guns in the incinerator. And we get a reference to Vietnam, talking about Punisher. I think we've gotten far enough now in the rolling continuity that they finally abandoned Frank's history as being a Vietnam vet, but still relying on it here. Cap does not care about all of that as far as the war, whatever. He's like, no, Frank Castle is insane. We make a cut again. We're back in Stamford, Connecticut. Tony's talking to Miriam, and we cut to then Doctor Strange's sanctuary and the Watcher.
I thought it was really cool when Miriam came up to Tony Stark, and this time she said, and this was Damien's favorite playset, and it was little 42, and she handed that to him. No. Okay.
It's worth noting, I actually had to look down. It's like, oh my God, did I miss it? You had me there for a second. Good job. Doctor Strange is set up sanctuary at the North Pole, and Uatu the Watcher is there with him, asking him how long it's been since he's eaten. Just thought it was interesting that the Watcher shows up at the beginning of the Civil War. He's there, but these other key moments, and now he's doing a meal check on Doctor Strange. It just felt a little odd. We cut to Rikers Island Penitentiary, and
hold on a second though, John, because it is important. He does do the meal check, right? He's doing a welfare check on Steven. But he also challenges him, right? Because he says, "Hey, you could stop this at any minute with a whisper or a gesture. Like, basically, why are you letting this proceed?" And I think Strange has like a really important response, right? He says, "There is no right or wrong in the bait. It's simply a matter of perspective." And I think that goes to the difficulty of navigating this. People say I'm Team Cap or Team Iron Man. I think are present company excluded, of course, are maybe missing the beauty of this story, is that it's not that easy.
Exactly.
It's a very good
Strange
point.
Gets it.
And Strange even admits that really what he's pulling for here is whichever eventuality spills the least amount of blood tonight.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're to the setup of Rikers coming through the gate into 42. Here's Cap and his team. They're going through the plan, thanking Black Panther for helping them get through. And then Spidey says, my spider sense is going off the scale. Seriously, this is DEFCON 1. Iron Man and his team all come in. Oh no, it's another trap. And Cap then reveals, well, maybe not so much. If you're talking about Tigra, we knew all about her. Tiger's like, what? Says, well, you're not the only one with a spy on your team. Iron Man says, that's impossible. And then Hank Pym drops his mask. Yellow Jacket looks at him, says, I'm sorry, Tony. Tony's like, Hank, what are you doing? You believe this more than any of us. And you turn the page, and Hank Pym's not Hank Pym. Hank Pym's not only not Hank Pym, he's not the Hank Pym that's not Hank Pym. He's Hulkling. Oh, now we get the payoff for what Rick was talking about back towards the beginning of the issue, when some guy just kind of comes in and is like, Hank, we got a sick guy over here. Can you come with me? Oh, conk.
Yep.
So Hulkling has been spying on their team, and Reed says, "Oh dear God, if he could mimic Hank's voice and retinal pattern, he has full authority to do whatever we can." Iron Man says, "The cells." Cap says, "I believe this evens the odds a little, and you get what's my backdrop."
Nice.
Well, at least some of it. You've got a full face off between so many people in the Marvel universe, including some rather obscure people. But we can come back to that a little bit later, because you flip the page, you got to the last pages of this, and it's Cap close up. Close your eyes, gentlemen. This might hurt.
That's a cliffhanger.
Yes, it is.
And once again, we have to wait 2 months for this to come out. Quick thoughts on issue 7 or 6, guys?
Well, I don't think it was a surprise to me. It certainly wasn't a surprise to anyone except perhaps Cap that, Punisher was going to kill somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
What
and
that,
so
the old adage of was it the scorpion and the frog or whatever?
Yeah.
well, yeah, Cap gave, I guess, Cap has a soft spot for giving people a second chance, third chance, fourth chance. In this case, he might have been a little bit desperate for help as well. And he let his guard down. So, but Frank had a point, right? I mean, which is a crazy point, that the good guys, at least according to the government and Shield, are hiring bad guys. So here I am. I'm trying to help the guys who are breaking the law. It's very confusing.
Well, I'm excited for issue 7. I'm sure our listeners are as well. So it's the same creative team, although this time Dexter Vine gets some help with inking from John Dell and Tim Townsend. So we open it up, and Iron Man and Captain America's forces fight against each other in the negative zone. So this goes on for a little bit. 2 Shield agents in the compound's control room try to lock the gateway back to Rikers Island, but Dagger and the Black Panther show up to open a different portal from the negative zone. And then Spider-Man swings on the scene, but 2 of Tony's guys stop him. And then Shield agent Doblonsky tells Commander Mariah Hill that Black Panther is rerouting the bridge to the Baxter building and shuts it down. Cloak calls Dagger, saying they need a large portal to get everybody out of the negative zone. So Cloak feels like this is going to be more than he can do, but he manages to engulf all of the heroes on both sides in his cloak and sends them to the outside of the Baxter building. And then Iron Man tells the police to evacuate the area so that there are no civilian casualties. I thought that was something worth noting. Iron Man does that. Spider-Man battles his way through 4 of Tony's guys in a really amazing way, or some would say spectacular.
Yeah.
And he then goes to kick Mr. Fantastic. The Thunderbolts all gang up on Captain America. And when I say the Thunderbolts, it's, remember those nasty villains at the cliffhanger right at the end? Yeah. So that is Lady Deathstrike and Venom and Bullseye and all of them. So, and they're making, good headway against Cap, ganging up on him. But Namor, Imperious Rex, shows up with his Atlantean Legion to help him. The Thor clone leads the initiative against the Atlanteans. So then Tony and Cap square off against each other, one-on-one. But the Vision comes up from behind and compromises Iron Man's armor, and Cap attacks him with his shield. Hercules starts to battle against the Thor clone, and then Sue Richards notices that Ben Grimm has joined the fight on their side. The Taskmaster aims a gun at Sue, but Reed takes the bullet while protecting her. And then Sue, she gets a little revenge against Taskmaster taskmaster for that. And then back in the fight between Hercules and Thor, Hercules gains possession of the clone, and his hammer, and uses it to bust apart the cyborg's head, yelling, "Thou art no Thor." Cap continues using his shield to crack Iron Man's helmet, and just as Cap prepares to deliver a blow, he pauses, just like he did over the Punisher. And just as that happens, the rescue workers, the civilians, they come and they tackle Cap. And then Cap realizes that what the fighting has done to the city. And he looks around, and its blocks are demolished. And he takes off his mask, and he surrenders to the police. And the other heroes on the rebels say, "What are you doing? This is, we're winning." And he's like, "No, we're not. We're losing. Look around." And that realization really hit home. And that's why Steve decided to surrender, then, rather than, as Dr. Strange put it, cause more bloodshed. At this point, the Punisher, Frank Castle, he looks and he picks up Cap's mask. And that is a story for another day. During the next 2 weeks, the 50-state initiative is launched, and the negative zone becomes a huge success with the public. The president gives Tony Stark a new job, and guess what? He's the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't think Mariah Hill's happy with that, but Tony is. And at the very end, he's talking with Miss Sharp, Damien's mom. And no, it's not Mephisto. And they're on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, and he explains why the prison was called number 42. And that was because it was the 42nd idea out of 100 ideas that he helped make after the Stanford incident, and promises the best is yet to come. The end. Now, I want to get into this issue and the story as a whole, but I want to address the very end and the feeling I had when I was originally reading this. And it was basically two things. It was, everything has changed. And the second thing was, and this is just the beginning. And that's, to me, what the story felt like. There was so much impact, so much tension, so much drama, so much huge things that happened that we've highlighted. And so, there was the immediate fallout, right? That Steve Rogers was arrested, Tony Stark as the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., Peter Parker's identity being made public, Bill Foster and others dead, the 50-state initiative. It was a lot, and packed into 7 issues. Of course, expanded in the crossovers and things like that. But it was, to me, and this is why it was in my Mount Rushmore, because of the impact that this story had. And to John, your point, right, in some cases, a very long-lasting impact. And I think Mark Millar and Steve McNiven outdid themselves with this story. Your thoughts?
I think of things, this type of stories I like, Rick. I like the stories that are thought provoking, that touch on what's going on in history or in everyday society. And this was so connected to what was going on in American society at the time that it's hard to overlook. And yes, it did ripple through the Marvel universe, but I hope anyway, to think that it caused a lot of folks to think about our reality
Mm-hmm.
and the things that were going on in American society at the time continue to go on, right? Because the good thing about these kinds of stories that they're eternal, and we can reapply the lessons that they teach in every new generation to the changing situations. And so when I read this originally, back when I came back from my tour in Vietnam, not in the battlefield, but in the embassy, and when I read it again, many years later, and when I read it again now, I see different things. And it's because the lens of my perspective changes, but also because the reality around us changes and allows me to understand what's going on. And in the sliding time scale, Cap's always, a year to 10 years out of the ice, maybe 15 years most, right? But the rest of us evolve and grow. And so I would hope that we read a story like this and we see something different as we grow and we evolve as well. I know I certainly have.
Well put. Yeah. John, how about you? You said before that the story on this read was not as strong a feeling or as impactful, or you didn't, I guess, think of it as highly as you did the first time around. So per Bob's point, have things changed for you?
Oh, undoubtedly, as far as how I've changed, and I guess the lens that I'm bringing to it now. And I'll get to that in a minute. I do want to hit a quick specific for this last issue. The 2 pages, the first page where it's a 3/4 page splash, Namor shows up, Imperious Rex. You go to the next page and it's 3/4 page splash with Thor and some of his team. Marvel is there.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why I bring it up. So at this point in the comics, Marvel, Captain Marvel, the one before Carol, he'd been dead for quite a long time. And I know from this time I was reading as many of the crossovers as I could into regular series, the one shots, all this stuff. And there was a one shot called Civil War, The Return. And that explained about the return of the original, if you will, Captain Marvel. Why I bring it up here is one of the things that I feel like this series suffered upon a revisit is, Rick, you even mentioned it earlier, you were reading the Amazing Spider-Man issues. That really fleshed out Peter's dilemma about whether or not he was going to reveal his secret identity. You didn't get that in the spine book, in this main series. It was just basically, hey, look, here's Spider-Man and he's Team Iron Man and revealing his identity. You didn't get any of that angst or whatever that goes into it. Likewise, here on this page, if you have any knowledge of the history of Marvel Comics at all going into this, but you don't get all of the tie-ins and everything like that, where'd Captain Marvel come from? The good thing about Civil War that we've kind of been talking about through this entire thing is the scope of it, the magnitude, the cinematic quality. And of course it does, because Mark Millar was writing Ultimates, and that really helped bring cinematic comics to Marvel. But it jumped around. I felt like, and really took a lot of things for granted as far as, oh, well, people will be reading this and know about some of these beats. So that kind of bothered me. But now to get more to the overall. I thought about something on this reread that I am somewhat embarrassed to admit I never thought of when I was reading it for the first time. And that was, if you look at this story not through the lens of the Patriot Act, post 9/11, which I understand that was when it was put out. But if you don't look at it through that lens and you instead look at it through the lens of something else, let's say gun control, does it change things? Does it change things for you? What I found myself wrestling with, as I've said, I was Team Cap, absolutely. When I was reading this, 100% every step of the way. Now, as I was revisiting it, I was like, I don't know. When you start seeing that this is very much rooted into a bunch of kids get killed in school.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have we actually lived with that in our culture? I don't want to get too far into politics here, but just it just screamed it at me this time around. It really left me more in the position that Bob was talking about earlier for himself. And Rick, you even jumped in about talking about how you maybe I'm not. I always want to be there for Cap. He's your favorite character. But this time around, I was like, I don't know. And if I look at it through this one particular lens, it gives me a whole different perspective. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I don't feel like that is a flaw in the story. I don't want to be perceived as saying that at all, but it does give me a whole different outlook on it than I had 20 years ago.
And I think to Bob's point, that's the beauty of really good literature, is that it gets you to think, and in our cases, different ways over different read-throughs. So I love your perspective on that, John. And I think, yeah, listen, I was a little hesitant to do this story tonight, to be honest with you, with everything that's been going on in our country. I felt like I needed something positive, and this was a little too close to home. But for scheduling reasons, we needed to do this.
The show must go on.
Yeah. And there's some parallels, right? And there's some things but I think the fact that we're sitting here questioning it, because, a lot of comics, superhero comics specifically, it's very obvious who the good person is, who the bad guy is. And you root for the good person, and you know the good person's going to win at the end. And ultimately, there's going to be some trials and tribulations along the way, but ultimately, that's the formula for superhero comics. This didn't have that, right? And the question kept getting asked: whose side are you on? And John, you pointed out, Marvel didn't try to paint someone good and bad. They just said, pick a side. And, and there was a lot of marketing around that. Are you Team Cap? Are you Team Iron Man? So this was just a really well thought out story that I think had it had such impact, but it was also really entertaining along the way. I hear you loud and clear in the fact that there was a lot of things you had to do, maybe read outside of, to truly flesh out and get the story. And look, Marvel was flat out honest when they said in their solicitation #1, the crossover that rewrites the rules begins here, and it's a crossover, right? That means more than one series, right? So they were pretty upfront of what that all entailed. So, but I hear you. I mean, I totally get your point.
John, I gotta wonder. You got me thinking in a different direction here. That the tension that plays out in this story is very much a tension between individualism and communitarianism, right? The community versus the needs of the one. And America's quite different than many other cultures around the world in that we have this tension, and we see it, we struggle with it every day in politics. I wondered how this played elsewhere around the world when other readers in societies that aren't nearly as individualistic, have a much more heavy focus on the social contract, would have broken out Team Cap versus Team Iron Man. But I see it like, for us, it is that constant tension between the needs of the community balancing the needs of the individual to have agency and do whatever the hell they want to do. And that's what this book is fundamentally about, which is why it applies to all the things that you mentioned, not just the Patriot Act, not just the response to the anthrax attacks of 2001, not just the school shootings, but all kinds of things, because that is the fundamental story of America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have one more question specifically to Rick. And, I don't remember us having this conversation because I think you and I got really swept up in what almost immediately followed in the life of Steve Rogers after Civil War. But
in case anyone, he's referencing Captain America 25 in the Ed Brubaker series, where Cap, who is handcuffed and about to go to trial for everything that happened in Civil War, gets shot down.
Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't read it yet.
Again, 20 something years ago. But no, what I really want to know now is, Rick, Steve Rogers is your favorite character, not just Captain America, Steve Rogers himself. With that in mind, trying as much to put aside Cap 25's coming, just this ending, the fact that he took stock of his surroundings and gave up, turned himself in, and told everybody else to stand down while he was at it. How did that resonate for you at the time? And does it resonate any differently for you now, 20 years later?
Excellent question. I think one of the things that stood out at the time, and it still is the same today, I felt it was a little abrupt. I felt it happened a little too quickly. I would have personally liked to have seen a few more pages building up to that decision, rather than, or some sort of questioning along the way, because up to that point he was so resolute, right? He was so sure that this was the right thing to do, and he was so angry at everything that was going on, and there wasn't a whole lot of doubt leading up to that point. And so I felt like his decision to put down his shield, take off his mask, was a little too abrupt. I would imagine if you would ask Mark Millar if he, he would have said, I wish I had a few more pages there, but, we ran out of time, and, we had too many big battle scenes and all that type of stuff. That'd be my guess. Hey, Mark, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show so we can talk to you about it. But do I see Steve Rogers as a character eventually coming to that decision? Yeah, I do. That's just who Steve is. I think he has that compassion, that, empathy, that emotional intelligence to see that, everything that, he felt like was the right thing to do, but it was causing more harm than good. And to make the ultimate sacrifice, to take everything on his shoulders, Because I think we didn't say it, but I think at some point in this last few pages of the story, um, Iron Man says something like one of the things that Steve asked for was, um, pardoning of the other rebels, and he would, take the fall basically, which is a very Steve thing to do.
Yeah, and I think it would draw attention to that one panel, right, where he's getting ready to beat down on Iron Man, and the first responders throw their arms around Cap to pull him off. There's a saying in Asia that when elephants fight, the grass gets trampled, which means when big powers fight, the people are the ones that suffer. And I think that moment resonated with him. That was the fulcrum on which his perspective, shifted. I think when those folks threw themselves into an active battle among superheroes in order to protect their champion, that had to have been a profound moment for Steve Rogers.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. That stood out to me. I think you're absolutely right. For a champion of the people, and this time around, it wasn't Captain America. That's got to resonate. The one thing I will add as a counterpoint, because I agree with so much of what you said, Rick. I really do. I'm not picking an argument with you, but the thing that does bother me a little bit is, why didn't Steve have that realization when Bill Foster got killed? Because Nighthawk and Stature, they did, and they were making that argument. But Steve, he was there, he saw the death, but he was still blinded. And the only thing I can say is what Bob was just saying, because I don't think it's going to be, he looks around, just sees property damage. Iron Man's already announced we're getting the civilians away. I think it's that these people, normal, everyday people, jumped in there and pulled him off of Captain America. I pulled him off of Iron Man. I apologize. That, I think, is what drove it home, but it still feels a little hard towards the death of Goliath.
That's a good question. I mean, I do feel that when the first responders were there and pulling him off, that was the pivotal point, right? But as far as Foster, my answer to that would be that I think Steve feels like we were in a war, and there's a difference between civilian casualties and those fellow soldiers. And I feel like he kind of saw Bill Foster as a tragedy, that he probably feels guilty that he wasn't couldn't stop that from happening, and he carries that weight. But at the same time, he realizes that, he didn't force anybody to do this, right? They all said this is what we want to do because they were being impacted. This wasn't Cap's fight. This was everybody's fight. And so I feel like maybe that's probably the difference, as opposed to now this, soldier sees the civilians feeling that way. And that's, what the trigger was.
Fair point.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the reason that we covered Civil War tonight was because of next episode is we are going to be going back to a panel by panel drama reading of Iron Man, Captain America, Casualties of War. So this was a one shot that came out. I don't remember if it was like between issues 6 and 7. Or I don't know, somewhere around. I'll tell you next week. But it was a story a quiet story where Steve and Tony try one more time to literally talk this through. And I feel like it's a much more impactful story as far as which is why we want to read this one out panel by panel. Now, the reason we're doing that next week is because the following week, which is the first Wednesday of March, is our guest interview, and it is the writer of Casualties of War, Christos Gage. So Christos Gage will be joining the show, and so we wanted to have, if with Christos coming on the show, we wanted to get Casualties of War done. If we were going to do Casualties of War, of course we had to do Civil War recap. And so, John, I want to thank you for coming on and lending your thoughts and your passion for these characters and for this story, and to make this a fun night.
Hey guys, I really appreciate it. I am not just being hyperbolic when I say this is the most fun I've had being on this podcast. So I think this was a fantastic thing. I appreciate your guys' takes on this and the thoughtful discussions.
I have one last question for you, John.
Sure.
What side would Batroc be on?
I couldn't help but notice that there was no Batroc in Civil War. And, he is French.
Yeah.
So he may have had to
He
have
was just giving up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to our French listeners. That was a softball. That was just a softball. I took it. I apologize.
I gave you the layup. You cannot be faulted for that at all. No, but if Batroc had been called upon, I would love to say it's going to be Batroc's going to side with Team Cap because he had so much respect for him. But no, Batroc's going to go Team Tony because Tony has all the money, and Batroc
right.
is all about the money.
I do think, however, he will go Team Tony, but he'd be pulling for Team Cap behind the scenes.
Absolutely,
because you cannot count on his loyalty. So
no, not at all.
And at the very end, when Tony's like, "Okay, everybody, villains, we need to get you back in the jail," Batroc would say,
"Leap, leap."
All right. So for Jon Waller Sewell and Bob Lucius, I'm Rick Verbanis, and thank you for listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.